So there are two principles that are very important when you're talking about type of goods. One is called excludability principle and rivalry in consumption. What does that mean? Rivalry in consumption means if we consume one extra unit, does it cost us more or not? If, for example, if we buy one sandwich, if we want to have another one, is there opportunity cost for that? Should we pay for it? Yes. That's called rivalry in consumption. Sometimes you consume the same product, but the more people consuming the product, we don't have to pay extra for it. The same resources used to provide the service for a lot of people. And the good example I just gave you last time is that benefiting from the sun, we can have 10 people benefiting from the sun, 20 people, the price or the cost or the charges that affect our consumption of sun is not changing. Okay. It's like you have in a room with electricity, for example. Room electricity, does not matter how many people you have in the room, the bill will be the same. Okay, so that's not rivalry in consumption. The second principle, which is excludability. Can you exclude people from consuming the product? Is there is a mechanism you can exclude them? In the private goods, yes, the excludability principle, because if you don't pay for the product, you'll not get it. There's nobody will give you something for free. For public goods, you may have one people paying for the product, but you will not be able to exclude people. If you build a park in your neighborhood, you cannot stop people from coming to benefit. And I give you example of like system alarm in your house. If you are living with a couple of people in the same house, this is 3 people living in the same house, person 1, person 2, person 3. And if the person number 1 decides to buy the alarm system, the other people can benefit. We cannot exclude them because they're living in the same house. Okay, so that's why. So that's why we have to figure out how to, like these 3 people living in the same house, they have to figure out how to buy the allocate resources. I'm not asking that, for example, if the price of the system alarm is $90, I'm asking everybody to pay $30, for example. I'm not going to divide it by 3. That's not how it works. And you understand that from the tax system, we don't pay the same amount of taxes. Each one of it based on his ability to pay. Not how much you consume of the public goods. It's how much you contribute in terms of taxes. It's based on your income. Maybe the person now number 1 has a lot of jewelry at home. He has to pay a little bit more. If a person 2 has just like his laptop, he cannot pay the same amount as the person number 2. And the same thing for person number 3. The one thing is you have to be sure is that if you buy it, you cannot exclude them. They will benefit from the benefit from the product. So that's a huge difference. We have to be able to distinguish between private goods, public goods. The free market provides public goods because we have the price mechanism that can exclude people, and people are fighting or cannot consume the same item together. Public good, it's no. We are not fighting from the same park, and if somebody pays for the park, everybody else will benefit. There's no way you can exclude them. Okay, that's very, very important. We talked about the externalities. It is really important to understand. The market is efficient because it does not charge the full price, the efficient price for consumers. Sometimes when you have transactions between 2 people, A and B, and the transaction affects the third party, we call it externalities. It could be negative, it could be positive externalities. The market does not take in consideration these externalities. He takes in consideration what is called the private cost only. The company looks at how much it costs them to produce a car plus profit. That's what they charge you. They're not going to measure the effect of your driving cars, the external effect. It does not know how to do that. Okay. So pollution, for example, when you're buying steel, the company does not look at how much you're gonna, like how much they polluted the air. Okay. So that has negative externalities. Education, for example, your government does, like the university will charge you tuition. They don't know. They're not looking at, oh, we're going to give him education. He was going to benefit society when he grows up or he gets education done. Then we have to include that in the price. No, only the market only includes the private cost. That's why it's not efficient. Either under allocate resources or over allocate resources does not give us efficient amount. So now we have to correct for externalities, and that's the role of the government. The role of the government is to producing the efficient amounts that reflect the real cost of the product. If the market is not able to do that, we have to find a mechanism to do that. Means if we have a product with negative externalities, what does that mean? Means the private price that you're paying in the market, it's way lower than the social price that gives us the optimal outcome. So because if you leave the market charges 800 for ton of steel, we are producing 110. That's way more than we need. If we look at that, because the price is low, people consume more of it. So we have to bring it, we have to lower how much we consume of steel. The way we can do that, we have to raise the price. Raising the price, it helps also bring down how much we consume of steel. That's one thing. A second, we'll have enough resources to correct for the externalities, to fix the pollution. So most of the time, either you have regulations, how much amount you can produce. The government can say, okay, you cannot produce more than 100,000 of or million tons of steel. Or we can just use taxation. We can tax the product. You know, when we tax the product, the price, because tax become a cost of inputs, tax, companies look at tax as like expense. Now, if you increase the expenses, what do you think happened to the supply curve? Will shift to the left. Will shift to the left to reach what is called social optimal outcome. And the price will be at 900, and we're going to produce only 1,000. That's how you correct for externalities. Now, we can have positive externalities when the transaction between A and B has positive effect. So you have transaction between A and B, but the outcome is affecting a third party positively, not negatively. See, you have transaction between A and B. You have a private cost, but the private cost does not reflect the benefit the society gets. That's positive externalities. Means we have, if this product is the transaction between A and B is benefiting the society, we have to produce more of it. We have to encourage people to consume more of this product. As one example is education, for example. Education, the more people get educated. We don't want less people going to school. We want more people to go to school because they have a positive effect in society. So what the government does, we want to encourage them. Well, how do we do that? We are helping them paying for this. You are paying for the cost, but the benefit is spread around other people. It's not fair for me to pay for the product and other people will benefit. They have to help me pay for the benefit, for the cost of the product. That's what education is. That is what financial aid is for, because we know you should not pay for the whole cost, because you will have a positive effect in society. That's what the government help people to consume more. We're going to shift the demand. So if we start from here, this is the market without government involvement. Means we are producing way low than we should produce. So if we have 200 people want to go to, let's say 200 people want to go to school, and if we let the market work, we only get 150 people go to school, and we have 50 people not going to school. So we want this 50 people to go to school. So the government has to help them, give them financial aid or free loans, whatever it is. We have to increase. So now you can see the optimal outcome now. The social optimal outcome is E2, with the price going up to 15, but also we are increasing to 200. But the government has to pay the difference. Okay? The government has to pay, that's called subsidy. Okay, that's very important. Or it has to give free financing. So it happens, for example, like the good example today you can think about is clean energy. Clean energy, it will not be able first to compete with other fuel resources because it's expensive to produce free like clean energy. But the difference between gas and solar panels is that the gas produces pollution, and the other one has a benefit in the environment. So the government has to subsidize companies that produce like clean energy to make it be able to compete in the marketplace. That they subsidize them either by giving them money, grants, or giving them finances. Okay, so it's very, very important. So Russia's misallocation of externalities. So if we have external cost, means if we let the market work by itself, this market failure, market will over allocate resources. If we have external benefit, the market will under allocate resources, and the government can correct these externalities or this spillover. If it's negative, we will use special taxes, pollution taxes, or influence taxes, regulations. We can also correct positive externalities. We help people to consume more of the product, either through giving them financing for production, subsidies, or regulations. Okay, so other functions of the government. So you know, a public court is a public good. We cannot, each one of us, the government has to provide the system, the legal system. The government has to protect consumers from monopoly, for example, or company taking over the market and destroying all other businesses. They promote competition, because competition is very good for consumers. It gives you better goods, better way to do things, cheaper way. That's a good. And we talked about providing public goods. Also, the government has to be sure that the economy is stable. If the economy is not stable, it's very hard to have any investments. People will not know what to do. And also the legal system, what does that mean? Government enforces a contract, that's civil law. Government defines and protects the property rights. So if you own something, you will be protected. And the government also established legal rules for how do we behave in society. So any like behavior that is, so you have to make one thing you have to understand. This is what's called civil law versus criminal law. Civil law, it has to deal with the contract, the relationship between peoples. Criminal law, any behavior that cause damage to society as a whole, that has external effect, could be criminal. So what does that mean? When you have a civil law, means two people are arguing with each other. When you have criminal law, you have a government against somebody because that person is becoming a hazard to the society as a whole. So you go in criminal law. So if you get into accident, for example, you're not going to be and you are drunk, you'll not be sued by the person that you get in the accident with. The government will sue you for drinking and driving. That's criminal law. But if you have a contract with somebody and you didn't fulfill your side of the contract, it's not criminal. The government will not be involved. You just say you have to sue the person in the civil law, civil court. So it's different. If you study business law, you will learn all these things. But it's very interesting. The contract law is very important. Now, the promoting of competition, the government has what's called antitrust law legislations, means you will not let the company take over the market, because that will be not good, because the companies will charge you more. It will not be efficient. So we have monopoly power. So for example, when the company tries to merge with another company, they have to be sure that they don't break this law. The first thing, when you're trying to buy a company, you have to go to Department of Justice to see if your share in the market will not be a problem for the market as a whole. So the government will not let you do that. It has to be proved first by the Justice Department. Now, we talked about principle, all this good stuff that we talked about public goods. Also, when you have the problem, what we have when we have a public goods, that's very important. So when you have a public goods, means somebody is paying for it and you cannot exclude them. We have what's called free rider problem. Like healthcare, one of the biggest problems facing healthcare is people who are going to take advantage of the system. They will not buy healthcare, but when they are sick, they go to the emergency room. We call them free rider problem. So you have to fix that. Every time you have a public goods, you will have what's called a free rider problem. If there are a lot of them, you cannot run the system. You have to figure a way, you have to limit this problem. Otherwise, it will not work. That's what happens with Obamacare. They have to have penalties. If you don't have healthcare, they will force you at the end, when you file your taxes, if you have enough income, you will be paid the penalty. We want to cover some of the money from free rider problem. Okay, so the government also, to stabilize the economy, they have to have jobs for people. The government is working to have full employment. Okay, so they have to lower unemployment rate. They have to create activities either through regulations or encouraging investments. So we have a lot of jobs. You have to have price stability. We don't want to price goes up and down. That's why we have a Federal Reserve. We want to have inflation, what's called inflation. We don't want the price to go crazy, like every day the price goes up. We have to have, because if you don't have stable prices, it's very hard to predict what comes in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. Or it's very hard to make any investments if you can do that. And to create jobs, also you have to have economic growth. If you don't have any economic growth, you cannot have jobs. So you have to be sure that the government is working. The role of the government to make the economy, make the system work to grow the economy. So people are willing to invest. People trust the system. If they don't trust the system, nobody will invest. If you don't invest, there is no growth economics and there are no jobs. Okay, so it's very important. One of the roles of the government, they don't create jobs, but they have to create environment, regulations that create jobs. They have to have a monetary policy, like a Federal Reserve. The monetary policy has to be sure that the price is stable. There is like the target level of inflation. So, for example, you don't want the price goes up by 10% every month, or 50%, like it happens in Venezuela sometimes. Like the prices, that's what causes the World War II. Germany has like 1,000% inflation. You buy a product today, by the time you get home, the price will change. So it's very hard to the money will worth nothing. You don't want to keep the money in your pocket because it loses value by the days. Okay, so that's the role of the government. We're going to talk about all this stuff. This is chapter 7. We're going to talk about job market. We're going to talk about the price, how the price is determined, and what government does to keep the price stable. Okay. The roles of the government, there are what's called sponsored good or merit goods, goods deemed socially desirable through political process, like museums, for example. Okay, there are something that are called inhibited goods or demerit goods, the goods that are not desirable, like drugs and stuff like that. The government has to provide these goods that are merit goods, and they have to limit or abolish basically undesirable goods in society because they cause a lot of external negative effect. Okay, so that's very important. What I'm going to go to also, the government also does what is called income distribution. See, we got through income, or it's called progressive income taxes. Means the more income you make, the more taxes you will pay. We have to have a system in place. The more income you make, the more taxes you pay, so we can take the money from the rich and redistribute it to the poor people. If we want to have any stable system. And the way you can do the distribution of income, there are two ways. You can do what's called transfer of payments or transfer in kind. Transfer of payments is they give you a check, do whatever what you want with it. Okay, that's like Social Security is a good example. Unemployment insurance is a good example. You just get transfer of payments. Transfer is not wages. Transfer means you didn't do nothing. We just want to help you. Okay, so that's, you didn't produce anything, because wages has to do with production. When you produce something, we don't call it transfer of payment. You are getting paid for your work. Transfer of payment is taking money from one person and basically and transfer it to the other. And also it's called transfer in kind. Instead of giving you money, I will give you specific things. I give you a voucher, for example, for housing. I will give you a voucher for school, for example, or I give you a voucher to pay for medical bills and stuff like that. So there are two ways you can do the transfer. Either you can distribution of income. It could be transfer of payment to send checks. Sometimes the government send checks to people, like with COVID, or you just give you like a transfer in kind. In kind means they give you a specific items. So that's the difference. So transfer of payments, money made by the government to individuals for which in return no services, goods are rendered. You're not paid for anything. You didn't produce anything. Government gives you the money. So Social Security for age and disability benefits, which is Social Security, and employment insurance benefits are all transfer of payments. Transfer in kind is payment that are in the form of goods and services. Food stamps. You cannot use the money you get for food stamps to buy something else. You buy a food with it. Subsidized housing, for example. You only use the money to pay for housing. It's specific. And Medicare. That's transfers in kind. Let's look at the government spending, for example, over years. The government spends a lot of things. But you can see the peak was during the World War II. The government spent so much money when we went to the War II. But since the 1890s, the government spending goes up a lot. But every time you see a peak, you just think about either economic crisis or war. Okay, so that's what makes the government spend more. So the government subsidized healthcare through Medicare. Medicare began in 1965. Pay hospitals, physicians' bills for U.S. resident over 65. So Medicare, you contribute to it when you are working. It's like 2.45% of your income goes to Medicare. When you get to 65, you will be eligible for this 2.9%, not 2.45. Okay, so that's the biggest domestic program in existence. The government spends so much money. Medicaid, it's state program that helps poor people. That's for lower income children and lower income. So you look at the percentage of like the government spending versus the state. The government spends a lot of money in 3 items. One of them is Social Security, defense, national defense, and healthcare. This is more than almost like 60% of all spending goes to these 3 items. For the state, because most of its education, and that's the highest expenses for the state. Now also healthcare, also it's a part of because now each state has its own healthcare system, like Mass Health. But the government, so people argue a lot of time about how we can cut spending. the only places you'll be able to cut spending is if you have to look at Social Security. If you can figure a way how to reduce the percentage of the budget that government spend on Social Security, means what? Means either you have to raise the minimum at the retirement age, or you have to ask people to contribute more for Social Security. It's national defense, the military spending. It's a lot of spending. And healthcare, a lot of spending. You see, healthcare is almost 28%. So that's where the government's money goes. Some people talk about like international affairs and stuff, but it's just only 1.3%. Say we give money to other countries. Even if we cut every money you spend to help other countries, will not be a big issue, because we have so much debt in US. That's a lot of debt, and they have to figure out a way you can cut down the debt. And you see, just the interest, 7.3% of the debt, like servicing the debt. 7.3% of the budget go to servicing the debt. That's a huge number. Okay, so just now look at this example. I want to show you what is the problem with subsidies. Now, there are two ways you can allocate subsidies for people, either for education or healthcare. The easy way you can do it is subsidizing everybody, helping everybody. What are you going to do? You go to the market, say, for example, let's say gas, for example. I'm trying to subsidize gas. So what I will do, the government that says, you see how many, what quantity that of gas is consumed? Let's say 1 million. The government will contribute $1 for each gallon. That's $1 million, for example. I'm just making an example. But there's a problem with this system is that you are helping everybody. Everybody that consumes gas will be received subsidy of $1. You are not making the distinction between people consume the gas. You can look at the education. So if you are making free education, means you are subsidizing everybody. Everybody gets free education. If you are able to pay or not able to pay, you get the same amount of subsidy. You have a higher income or lower income, you get subsidized, because that's like the blanket subsidy. And a lot of third world countries do that. That's why the government in third world countries spend a lot of money in healthcare, education. That's big items, because they subsidize gas for everybody. Everybody, if you have one car, two cars, you are a company, you get subsidized by $1 for each gallon you consume. Who is going to benefit? Who benefits the most here? It's people with more cars. It means poor people, they don't have cars. Even if you have one car, it does not consume a lot. But the rich people, they have 2, 3 cars, they get the subsidy from this. So that's what makes this subsidy does not work. What's called the mean testing subsidies. I'm not going to subsidize everybody like what they do in mass health. Not everybody will get free healthcare. Only if you are qualified. You see what is your income. So let's say, let me give an example so you can see how that will work. So it requires a lot of data, a lot of calculations, but that's the only way you can do it. So you have the demand for healthcare, you have the supply, you have the equilibrium here at $10, for example. There are some people are able to pay, for example, $10. I'm not going to subsidize them. I'll be giving them nothing. But if somebody is only able to pay $8, I will subsidize him with $2. So somebody is only able to pay $7, I will subsidize him with $3. Somebody will be able to pay $5, he will pay $5, and I will help him with $5. Instead of subsidizing everybody, I end up subsidizing based on your ability to pay. And the people in the bottom that have nothing, that are not able to pay anything, I will give them the free healthcare. So you can see, instead of subsidizing everybody and give them $10 each one, I end up only doing what is called mean testing. If you do the calculation in general, you will find out doing this way, it's much easier. But what it requires, you have to know the income of each family in the state or in the country. It requires a lot of information. In US, it's easy because everybody files taxes. We know everybody files taxes. At the end of the year, you will have to file taxes. They will know. In the third world countries, most of people are cash-based economy. They get paid cash. The government cannot find a way to subsidize based on income using the mean testing. Okay. So also other people like look at this issue in terms of Social Security. Also, Social Security. Everybody, let's say, gets $3,000 a month. But is it okay to give like Bill Gates $3,000 a month? That's called the mean testing for Social Security. It says, no, we are not going to give Social Security to everyone. It's called social security. It means it's like if you don't have money, you will find a way you get paid from the government. But if you have money, you are rich, you don't need this 3,000. Okay, a lot of people are calling for this system. Now in US, if you contribute to Social Security, you contribute. At the end, when you get to 65, you will get your check. You can wait till 70 or 80, but you will get it eventually. You get rich, poor, you get the Social Security. The maximum you can get is like 3,200. Some people get 1,200. So imagine a rich person gets 3,200, and a person without no wealth, he gets 1,200. There are a lot of people get $1,000, 500. So what some people are calling for, no, we have to figure out the main testing, but it's not the people who are against this. So there are some people who are for mean testing for Social Security. Means you only get Social Security if you qualify. If you don't have any income, you get to 65, you didn't save any money, you have no wealth and stuff like that, you get Social Security. But if you are Bill Gates, you own a company, you have money and stuff like that, you will get nothing. That's called mean. Some people says, no, it's not fair. Why? It's not fair because I contributed to the Social Security. When I was working, you're taking the money. You're not giving me anything. Social Security is not a gift. It's not the money of the government. It's my contribution to the system. I paid what is like 15% every year from my check. At the end, I had to get that money back. It's a fairness question. So there is a fairness question. There is equity question. So everybody comes from a different perspective. Okay, so it's up to you to make your mind what you think it's the right idea. Okay, now before I finish this chapter, I want to talk about something very important, which is decision making. How we make decisions in terms of public sector versus the private sector. That is more also a very complex system. So collective decision making, it's how you vote. When you are voting, you are making decision. Okay, you are trying to select somebody who has the same ideas, because the people you select, they will spend your money, your tax money. And you cannot you cannot take the budget of the city or the town or the country and divide it among the people and everyone will make their own decision. No, we have a jar of money, we have to decide how to spend it together. Versus the private sector, you cannot decide yourself what you want to buy. Okay, that's called the theory of public choices. We want to study how we make collectively, we have decisions making collectively. At the same time, the motivation that the reason or the motives that you take in consideration, or the assumptions you make when you are trying to buy a bottle of water, it has to be the same thing that will drive your decision making when you're trying to vote. Okay, you have to look at your self-interest. You cannot just randomly vote for people. You're trying to buy jeans or sneakers, you're trying to figure out who makes you happy. It's the same things for the public choices. The person you will select, it has to be somebody who's fighting for your self-interest. Okay, so there's same things applies. You have self-interest, every decision makes opportunity cost, you have competition of ideas. It's the same things as buying a bottle of water. The difference is the incentive structure. Okay, it's not the same. So the system of the reward and punishment in the public sector is different, not the same. Okay, now the difference between market and collective decision making, the government goods are at zero price. You don't, when you get the service from the government, will not cost you anything. It's paid by the government. That's different than buying something from your pocket. Government also has the right to use force. He can force you to do things. If the government, you don't want to do something that the government asks you, he may use force. If you don't pay your taxes, they will put you in jail. So that's for public decisions. When we are trying to make decisions, we vote, but for a public market, we spend. Okay, so here's what happened. They can see how that it's different. So the private market, you vote with your money. It's a vote. For a public goods, you don't vote with your money. You use your vote as the way you decide. Okay, so when I go buy Apple, I am voting for Apple. When I buy Samsung, it's like using my money. I am using my money as a way of saying I like your product. Now, The problem is this. So let's say smartphone market, you have 10 people, 10% want iPhone. We have 20%, for example, want Samsung. And we have the rest, let's say 70% want other phones. What do you think happens in the private market? The company will produce 10% of the total market, a smartphone. Okay. Samsung will produce 20% of the total number of smartphones sold in the market, and the other companies will produce 70%. We call it a proportional outcome. We are not going to say, oh, okay, we're not going to say, oh, 70%. Let's say Nokia. I'm just making stuff here. Let's say Nokia, for example. We cannot say, oh, Nokia, 70% of people want Nokia. We're going to just produce Nokia only. No, we can satisfy the needs of people who want the iPhone. We can answer for the demand for the people who want Samsung, and also we will answer for the demand for people who want Nokia, based on the proportion. That's the private market. It's called proportional decision making, based on the proportion. If you have 1% want iPhone, we can produce one iPhone. But if we don't have, nobody wants iPhone will not be produced. Now, in the public sector is different. So you have, you are here, you have to make decision. So let's say you have a jar of money, that's the government budget. Some people want to spend it in education. That's group one. Group two want to spend it, for example, in going to war, or for example, let's say war, going to war, for example. Let's say what decision we're going to make collectively, we have to look at what's called the majority rule. 50% plus one. That's all we need. So if we have 50% plus one voted for this political party that want to spend the money, 50% plus one voted for this political party that want to spend the money in education, the money will be spent there. Now you are voting with using your vote as tool of making decision. You are saying, but we're not gonna care. We're not gonna say, okay, we're gonna spend 50% plus one of money in education and 49 point whatever 90% in war. No, we only look at the majority rule. That's it, done. We are not going to. That's what this is why voting is so important. If you don't participate, if you are not part of the system, somebody will make decision in your place. Don't complain, especially people who are not voting, people who are ignoring the political system. You just don't care. You let the people decide in your place. That's why you have to know what is your interest, what matters for you, and then you have to vote for people who represent in your interest. Okay, so you can look at people. For example, you have two parties in US. You have the R's and you have the D's. See which one represents your interest. So this is the one thing. This guy, like, this is a book. What's wrong with what wrongs with Kansas or something like that. So most of the time in economics, we think that people vote for their economic interest. If you vote, you're looking for people who represent your interest. Like as a worker or as low income person, low income, you look at the Democrats versus Republican, who is representing your economic interest. Most of the people, rightly or wrongly, think that the Democrats are the party for working people, middle class people, and the R's are for rich, lower taxes group of people. But the question that you will ask yourself, who has more members, who has more followers, the D's or the R's? If you look just at the structure of the society as a whole, there are more people are in like the bottom of the scale versus people are in the top of the scale of the society as a whole. But how can you explain this group of people a lot of the time wins election? Anybody? If you understand what I'm saying. If you don't, tell me. First, do you guys understand what I'm talking about or no? Hello? Yes. Yes. Thank you. Please, somebody says yes. Anyway, it's okay. So now, if you are like, that's where like the human genius comes to play. Okay. If I know I am here, so I am these, I know ours, I know all this. They study all this stuff in US. They know what is the structure of the society. They know who is rich, how many riches we have. We have like Bernie Sanders would say 1/10 to 1% are having 50% of the wealth in US, and the majority of people are. But when you go to vote, these people get more vote. I don't know if I'm just saying from what I learned in US, the Republicans are for lower taxes, less spending, means they have to cut like all the programs that are like addressing the needs of the poor, but they win. So if I notice, the Republicans always successful in making the argument not about that. I have to change the subject. I know I'm losing this argument. Never argue the argument that you know. You don't go to the battles that the war that you know you're gonna lose. You just have to change the rules. You have to argue about something else. You have to create shining, what's called shining objects. You have to create. I'm not saying it's true. I'm just saying based on what I learned. I'm not expert in US elections. Object. You have to create some shining objects. You have to be very good at creating the side discussions. One of them, look at like the values. I say we have the same values. We don't have the same wallet. We don't have the same bank account, but we have the same values. We are against abortion. Anybody that's against abortion comes to the Republican Party. Anybody who is against gay marriage comes to our party. Anybody if it thinks that you have to be like America is the, I'm not saying it's not, but it's just saying, well, we have to be patriotic. We have to define. Anytime that you're trying to like look at the foreign policy in US, and you're trying to be like looking like open your eyes and see what happens, they will attack you. They are not Republic. They are not the patriots. So they are trying always looking most of the time in the elections. What happens with what is his name? The guy from Massachusetts, John Kerry. John Kerry just was destroyed because he was in the Vietnam War and stuff like that. People are not talking about what John Kerry gonna do for the society. Just looking at his history, what he's doing in Vietnam. What is it like? John McCain, poor John McCain, God bless his soul. They destroyed him because they accused him of having a blackhead. You are looking for issues you're looking for shining objects to change the subject. But if you just look at your self-interest, say who is going to represent my economy. If your decisions is not based on what is the values and all these social issues, obviously you have to go to vote for Democrats, because they promise you they will give you free healthcare. They will promise you'll get free education. I don't know if they will pay for it or not, but how? But they think that you have right for healthcare, you have right for education, you have right for like child tax credit for your children. You will have the free education for pre-K. So all this stuff, it's your benefit. But at the end, some people just like, so they will tell you, who would you like to have beer with? This guy or this guy? Is like the biggest problem for you is having a beer with somebody. Would you like to have beer with Hillary Clinton, or have a beer with Trump? So it's not about the issues, it's about personalities. So they will mix up everything at the end. When you have so much things you have to deal with, you just go with your emotions sometimes. You don't use your reasoning. Your logic is gone. Then you have to be, sometimes you make a lot of decisions emotionally. Even if you know you're going to lose. That's the sad part of the economy, does not take that in consideration, does not look at the emotions when people making decisions emotionally. So that's very important. So in the political system, we make decisions based on majority rules. In the market system, we make decisions based on proportional rules. That's huge difference. Okay, so it's very important. So we are only to make decision for public goods because the government provides public goods. We just need 50% plus one. For a proportional rule, whatever percentage that, like in the private market, Tesla, if 5 people want to buy Tesla, we will produce 5% Tesla. 10% want GM, we're going to produce 10 based on the proportion. And everybody is voting with this, with their pocket. That's it for chapter 1, chapter 5. I posted the slides. You can go back, look at them. I really want you to go look at this chapter a little bit, because it's just most of the time in economics we talk about how we make decisions in the private market, talking about the prices, supply and demand. All of the government. You cannot, most of the time, the mistakes people trying to make, you cannot compare FedEx with the post office, because the post office is here to serve you, because it's a public service. versus FedEx is trying to make profit. The incentives are not the same. Okay, and then you cannot compare them. You cannot say the post office is not efficient. Well, post office can deliver the letter for a person who lives in the middle of nowhere. FedEx will not do that unless if they charge you more, unless if it makes profit for them. Okay, and where we make decisions is not the same. It's not majority rule, not the same as proportional rule. Okay, so what I did, I posted the slides for chapter 5. I posted the questions with the answer at the bottom. You can try them. It's not something you have to submit, but I just want you to go try them. If you have any questions, please let me know. And that's it for today. Next class, we're going to start chapter 7. Please try to do the homework for chapter 3. Chapter 3, I think, is over now. Chapter 4, and do the quiz number 2. Because soon after, like the 23rd, I think, you will have the exam for chapter 1, 2, 3, 4. If you have any questions before the exam day, if you want something you don't understand, you have issues with something, question in your homework, question in the quiz, take screenshot and bring it to the class. We're going to go through it together. But if you do the homework and the quizzes, the test will be just same thing, not big problem. So, and also I said last time, I don't know if I said it or I just think I did, that you remember homework, you have unlimited trials. You can try as much as you want, no time limit. Quizzes, you have 2 trials, no time limit. At the exam, you will have 1 trial, time limited. Okay, well, be sure that you have enough time to do the homework, but be sure if you cannot just study during the exam. I can tell you that. You have to be sure that you review chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, and you are ready to go. I will not have a lot of questions. You might have like, I think, around 30 questions for the exam. Will be a lot of it is just multiple choices, true, false questions. Okay, so I'm here if you have any questions. Otherwise, I'm going to stop here. I'm not going to start chapter 7 today. I will start it next class.